And we're back with Truth Unrestricted, the podcast that is creating and interpreting the language of the disinformation age. I'm Spencer, your host, and I'm back again today with Patrick. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm doing good, Spencer. And sometimes you mention some little bit of trivia from our past, and I thought, kind of given the
Oh shit.
topic of
It's going to come back
technological
to me now, isn't
advancement,
it?
yeah, I wanted to point out to your listeners that you were on, like, you deserve credit for being on the very cutting edge of tech, for being among the first people I knew to have a Gmail account. And
Mm.
I was one of the honored recipients of one of your 5 limited edition
Five.
invites
Only
that you
five.
as a user, yeah, got to give out. And to this
Yeah.
day, I still use that email address, which you emailed me earlier today. So
Hmm.
I thought, yeah, with technological advancement in the air around this episode, I thought it was worth bringing up.
It's, yeah, my little badge of honor. I was one of the very first people that got Gmail. I'm not sure how many there were, but it was not that many. I was super lucky.
Yeah, and that those we were just shipping megabytes across the internet
Yeah,
with those attachment sizes.
because the only other kind of free option that was available was Hotmail, and Hotmail was
Yeah,
like very small amount of information you could ship in one email. It was such a
yeah,
hassle, and
like 1 megabyte, I think,
there was no,
if even.
drive option. You could plop it in a drive or whatever. We had a mutual friend who had uh, an FTP site set up, but he wanted it only for music, so it was like you could transfer music that way, and that was it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but other files you had to, like, I don't know. What did we do? Did we deliver them, or we probably just talked about them and bragged about having them, and
well, it
because there
was
was no
like
YouTube.
we could send songs, right? Because songs were what, 3 to 5 megabytes, and suddenly with the 10 megabyte limit, it was just like, oh,
Well, with
now it
email
was,
we finally could send songs. Yeah, that's
yeah,
right. But yeah, for other things we just had to, like, tell each other about them like it was the
yeah,
90s.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, you wouldn't believe this thing I saw. You're right. I don't believe it. Yeah. So, there's no housework. Housekeeping. That's what
Housekeeping,
podcasts do.
yeah.
Housekeeping. Yeah, we don't do that.
You don't get out of
I don't
housework
even know what the
just
word
because you
is.
have a podcast, yeah.
Yeah. But I want to talk today about a thing called existence bias. So this came up in conversation between you and I in
Mhm.
our things that we do online, and you pointed out that you were a little shaky on what this really meant.
Mhm.
So I said, well, we won't do it now. We'll just do it on the podcast.
Sure.
So, put on my professor hat. Existence bias is a philosophical concept that's meant to explain a piece of our cognitive reality. So, what does that mean? What does that mean? All these big words. So, first of all, I want to point out that when you look for this, so once you said that you couldn't find a real definition, I knew that I had seen one once.
Mhm.
And then I did a search for it real quick, and I found several sources that were not the same thing that I had uh, read once and come to understand was existence bias. They're related, but
Mhm.
it's like people are taking this term in the way people do, taking this term and they're applying it to other things that are related to it, and then this term takes on sort of new meanings.
Right.
Um,
And that was what I found when I went looking. I did find examples of it, but
yeah,
um they
but they were
were,
probably different from each
yeah.
other, and also
Yeah.
maybe different from the way I was using it. Yeah, right.
Yeah. There wasn't like a hard-coded definition, like, you know, the
Yeah,
dictionary definition, if you will.
yeah. So I learned when I did a search that, first of all, there's some people. This actually came from like a paper that was submitted to a journal. I think it was actually PubMed, which I think means that it's just sort of published free publication with no people checking. But it's not like it's a scientific thing really, but it's because it's philosophy. Philosophy is not really science. It's
Mhm.
sort of adjacent to science. philosophers are going to hate that I said that, but whatever. Eat it, philosophers. Come at me.
Well, it's
So,
not physics.
yeah, well, yeah. There is a definition that was in this article on PubMed that there will be a link to in the show notes with a reference to this as a logical fallacy. So the gist of this is that the mere existence leads to assumptions of goodness, like the status quo is seen as good, right, attractive, tasty, and desirable. So I've had some thoughts of doing a separate episode about that concept, but I wouldn't call that existence bias. I would call it something probably more like status quo bias or something like that, right? Like there's a thought that like this comes up especially with thoughts about the shape of the human body, that the human body is perfect because it's the version that won all of the competitions, and in the survival of the fittest, we're at the top of the food scale. We are the fittest then, and then we are the perfect form.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not true. Just tell your appendix that most people have to get taken out, right?
Yeah.
Or your tonsils or any other organs that fail regularly. Um,
I think people kind of make that argument
your wisdom
using,
teeth that we generally almost everyone gets taken out, right?
yeah.
So
I
the
think
human body is not
sometimes,
perfect.
yeah, not like a bubble is perfect the way it collapses to its lowest energy state to hold consistency, right? Like I think
If
that's what,
that's the way you define perfect, I mean, it's a perfect, it tends to become a very, very close approximation of a sphere. So if perfect is
yeah,
spherical, then yeah, it's very, very
yeah.
close to perfect. But if perfect is cubical, it's very bad at that. So I will
You
tell
need
you
more
that,
bubbles if you want to make a sphere. I mean, sorry, if you want to make a cube. I've seen
yeah,
it done.
quite a,
Yeah.
mm, I'm gonna wait to see. Okay. All right.
In a quick
Yeah.
explanation, if you have a bubble and you hang 5 other bubbles around it, so 4 to create the walls and 1 underneath it, it will create the cube form. My
An
friend does this Bubble
approximation of a
Wonders
cube.
show. Yeah, it's close enough.
Yeah. See, approximation
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
I did engineering in school. I know
Yeah.
everything is just an approximation.
I wonder. I wonder. Yeah.
Yeah. But this definition as a logical fallacy is a real. The idea of it is a real logical fallacy. I would not use existence bias as this. What they're saying is that because a thing exists and it in its current form is good and right. Um, Humans do this all the time. We look at all sorts of things about the world and think that they're good and right. Things about our world that people are starting to question whether they're good or right, that used to think, oh, we're perfectly good or right, are things like capitalism. When we were kids, people just generally thought capitalism was good and right because it's the way that we're doing it and things are working out okay.
And it's not
Yeah, the last
communism.
20 years or so, 15, 20 years, ever since the 2008 collapse, we've started to question a lot more about, whether capitalism is all it's cut out to be. I don't know. The game's not over yet for capitalism. It's still in the running, but it's not on as firm a ground anymore. That's all I'm saying.
Mhm.
But definitely people have this bias to capitalism. And another thing that people definitely have a bias for related to that is our currency. That if you talk to economists, especially like online, if you run into them or whatever, they love the fiat currency system. They think it's good and wonderful, and there's nothing else that could ever be better than it. And I say, really? Like, I'm not saying we should go back to the ones we had before it because I think this one is better than those ones. But to say that you can't imagine one that's better, well, I think you're just not imagining well enough.
Mhm.
For example, before we got a fiat currency system, we had the gold standard, and everyone thought the gold standard was good and wonderful, and no one could imagine anything better than that until someone imagined the fiat currency system, and then it was better.
Mhm.
So yeah, there probably is a better system than the fiat currency system. It would take someone who knows a lot about economics to start imagining some things and work on it. And I think we probably should. but that's another story. We're not going to go into that. But yeah, we have these things where we think that because this thing exists in its current form, that's the best form for it to be, or for anything to have, or anything like that. So, comments about that, Patrick? Have I explained that to sufficient capacity?
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
good
Okay. Yeah.
opening
All right.
remark
Yeah.
about it.
So that is when people look online, they might run into that definition or even that paper. And I'm sure that the people who wrote it are very, very smart, but I wouldn't use existence bias as that to explain that idea.
So we're talking about the paper that I
The
shared, like that Yudkowsky and
no,
company.
no,
Oh,
no. This is the
you're
one
talking about
by
the. Oh,
Eidelman,
okay,
Crandall, and Pattershall, I think is the
okay,
way I
okay.
pronounce that. Yeah, but there's another one
Just in the
here.
definitional sense, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then when I searched, I found another one. There was another definition aside from this one, which I thought was interesting. Um, so this is a definition from a perspective as like political or populist polemic. That existence bias would influence someone to grant more value to a future that increased numbers of sentient individuals, and devalue futures that decrease the number of sentient individuals. So this idea is related to an idea called natalism. Natalism being the idea that the goal of life should be to have as many children as possible, and that that's good and natural and right. That we should always have more sentient individuals, more people. Although I think that whoever wrote this probably referred to sentient individuals and were probably mostly referring to humans. It might be noted that all the animals, as far as we can tell, generally are sentient individuals. And the more humans there are, the more we drive most of those species into extinction, decreasing the number of sentient individuals. That's if you're going to weigh that, then maybe that's a thing you should think about. If you're following that logic. But this came from a thing called the Effective Altruism Forum. Now, I've never talked much about the effective altruism as an idea, but that forum, I guarantee, is full of a lot of bad ideas. It's effective
What are some of the
altruism
worst offenders?
is this whole extra thing. It's meant to be about doing good for humanity. But it turns out that in the end, the best thing for humanity is to let one person get all the money and hope that they do the right thing with it.
Well, we're well on our way then, aren't we?
Yeah. Effective altruism was espoused by a crypto guy that named Sam Altman, who adopted it and declared that his crypto exchange was going to give away all this money. It ended up not giving hardly any money away. And in fact, it ended up wasting a whole bunch of money and crashing because when people tried to take their money out at one point, it wasn't there.
Hold on a second. Are you
Hold
talking
on a
about Sam
second.
Altman or Sam Bankman-Fried?
Ooh,
Because
no,
Sam
you're right.
Altman is OpenAI. Yeah,
Sam
yeah,
Altman
yeah,
is, I got my Sams mixed up. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Now, there's a
Yeah,
few.
yeah.
They
Sam
call him
Bankman
Scam
Fried. Yeah.
Altman. Yeah.
Sam Altman is also probably not
He's
great,
got
but
some issues.
Sam
Yeah.
Bankman-Fried was you're right, you're
Yes.
right. I stand
Okay. Okay.
corrected. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sam Altman fans.
I've been
Your
very
guy
front
is
row
bad for a
to the
whole
whole.
different reason.
Yeah. FTX collapse was huge in my world when it happened.
Yes,
So
right, right. Sam Bankman-Fried. That's right.
yeah,
I should have had this prepared. I just had
that's all
the
right.
reference prepared. I didn't have the whole Bankman-Fried thing.
That's good. That's
But
why I'm
effective
here.
altruism, yeah, it was meant to be based on a serious grounding of a bunch of ethical bases. And despite the fact that Sam Bankman-Fried's parents are both professors of ethics, he apparently had none.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a couple podcasts I should probably link in the show notes that detail why how that came to be, but no need to go into too much of it here. But suffice to say that I wouldn't really trust a lot from the effective altruism forums. I think they're full of all sorts of philosophy dressed up as good ideas that are probably not well supported.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You
the
got to
idea
wonder,
that we
why are
should,
people going there though, right?
well, they think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Like a good idea to help them find a way to be good or
I
to
mean,
further the
they
good.
want to be
But
altruistic. They want to do good
I don't
things in
know.
the world. Yeah, they but
It's
most of the ideas I've seen come from there, the manifestation of those ideas are all fucking terrible. And um, yeah, I think it's I think the whole thing has to get rethought. Yeah, I think Sam Bankman-Fried is in jail now, isn't he? Isn't he in jail? Didn't he get to sent to prison for his
I think
fraud?
so. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
he
know.
was he had yeah, who was
Yeah,
his
and they still
roommate for a
haven't found
minute? Was
most
it
of that
Diddy
money.
or Kanye or someone? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. We're not doing a Sam
No.
Bankman-Fried podcast right now. We're doing
Well,
existence
yeah.
bias.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a whole different thing. But that definition of existence bias, that's more like multiplication bias, or like population growth bias or something. Like that's not really existence bias, even by the root of the name. But this was an existing idea that other people have taken and tried to apply to their idea, which, as a guy who comes up with ideas and puts names on them, I find offensive. I think you should come up with your own damn name. I work hard at making sure I don't steal names from other ideas and apply them to my ideas. That's just lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's also something grifters would do. Not saying that these people are necessarily grifters, but this one did come from the effective altruism forum. So draw whatever conclusions you want.
Grifter roots, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to get into the real factor about the real meaning of existence bias. So, by the name, it's a bias, and all biases are things that affect decision. That's the definition of bias. You can't get around
Mm-hmm.
that. But what would it mean for something to have an existence bias? So, this literally means that sentient creatures that have existence bias tend to make decisions that lead to their continued existence.
Mm-hmm.
So, decisions that will lead to their long term survival, for example. And one could make the argument that it's about continued existence. So, the idea that you're going to continue, as in having children, could be a factor in this, especially if if you have a belief in you that a part of you carries on with your children, that this definitely applies, right? Um, Generally, people who purposefully have children believe that. Not everyone believes that who has children, but we're not here to pass all these judgments on how people make their parenting decisions. At least not today. We can do that another day. But that's exactly what it means. Existence, that your continued existence means something to you. And it's not a bias that will move the needle absolutely in every direction. It's not that everyone will always make only decisions that lead to their own survival, but there's a tendency to do it. That's why it's a bias. It's not a hard fact of your decisions. So let's just start with that, Patrick. Am I making sense here? Is this? I probably have a dozen questions
Yeah.
based on that, but
I think that, that opens up the avenue of exploration where, like, what are the decisions that we make where our own existence bias, like, you know, aside from procreation, I don't think we often face many decisions that have any sort of relationship with, to continue existing or not continue existing, right? Not in our day to day. I don't think we come up against it a lot.
we in
people.
Western society in comfortable Canada, we
Sure.
don't.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good point.
right. Uh, you know, even as little as 150 years ago, the existence here in this exact place would have been much different, and those people would have on a regular basis, probably daily, been making decisions that would lead to them surviving or not surviving, right? So like one would probably look at the three basic instinctive choices as being part of this, which are colloquially known as feed, fight, and fuck, right? Procreation, fighting off predators that would prey upon you, and then eating from some source so that you can continue existing, and maybe even stockpiling food might be included in that, right? For seasons when the food might not be available.
Hmm.
Um, but in a more complicated human sense, where our lives are more complicated than they were when, say, we were Neanderthals. If you lived in a house in this part of the world where we live now, we're not going to say exactly where we live so that we can protect something of our identities, but um, if you lived in this part of the world 150 years ago, you probably would be well advised to gather wood during the summer and fall seasons so that you could survive the winter.
Hmm.
And this is a decision you would make that would increase your chance of survival. And you could choose to not gather wood. And you might even survive. You might even survive if you don't gather wood, right? That's not a
Hmm.
guarantee that you're going to die, but you're going to greatly increase your chances of survival if you gather the wood and you have wood to burn and you have a way to heat yourself during the months that are extremely cold. So looking ahead to that, that's not a strictly a thing that's directly tied to the three basic instinctive decisions, but it is something that there is something about you and your cognitive thought processes that will probably cause you to, if you were, transported back in time 150 years, you're probably gonna, you know, gather wood for the winter season because likely want to, survive to see another year.
Hmm.
Um,
Of
because
course,
that's
you
a
have that
thing we do.
awareness, right? You have that
Well,
awareness. So if you have the
yeah,
awareness that you need this particular practice to survive,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
choosing off of that path then is purposely, you know, counteracting that existence bias, or that would be some sort of defeat of it, I would think, right? Because the
Well,
bias is to survive, to
yeah,
look at what am I doing this summer? I'm
to
collecting wood,
continue.
I'm building a
Yeah,
hut, or I'm just hanging out on the beach, even though that means that I'm going to be fighting harder for my survival in the winter, right? Like I'm
yeah,
not.
yeah. True. Um, and some people didn't work hard enough to collect wood.
Mhm.
That's a thing that definitely, I didn't have to know them to know that it happened to some people. I just know people, and some people, they're, probably to some extent as lazy then as some of them are now, and some of them didn't collect enough wood, figured it was enough.
Yeah. So maybe there's degrees of expression how existence bias comes
Well,
about.
I mean, there's no guarantee that you're going to do all the things. There's just a tendency. There's a bias.
Mhm.
You know, it's going to get cold, and I know it's going to get cold. I
Mhm.
know how to live through a cold time. That's by burning wood. It'd be a
Yeah.
lot easier to collect the wood now than it will when it's cold.
Well,
Um,
if we look a
yeah,
little into the future, this discussion too, as how it relates to I don't think that if we're talking about the presence or absence of the existence bias in I don't think it would exist to degrees the way it does in humanity because of such broad variation across humans, lifestyles, customs, cultures, things like that. I think that
right.
when we start to delve into that technological forefront of does this actually play a role, it would be much more, I guess, binary in nature. Like, does
Yeah.
it exist or does it not exist? Because I don't think there would be variation.
Well, we don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
existence bias is literally just a concept.
Hmm.
We don't have a causal mechanism, a known causal mechanism, right?
Hmm.
There, we did map the genome, but despite the fact that we numbered all the genes in the human genome sequence, we still don't know what nearly all of them do. And for some reason, we don't understand. There's something like 68% of them are identical to that of a dandelion, which was interesting when they found out. But they're like, oh, what the hell does that mean? Oh,
Hmm.
um, of course,
So
I can't imagine a creature that's a thing that's more different than me than a dandelion. But 68% of me is identical to it. So okay,
yeah, yeah, that's pretty wild.
weird. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
wonder. So
we don't have this known. It's not like this is the sequence of genes that lead to us having this thing.
mhm.
Uh, but we're pretty sure that all the animals also have existence bias.
At the animal level of life, yeah,
Well,
once
because
you
they're
start to
making
have a
decisions,
theater
right?
of consciousness, yeah.
They're making decisions, and some of those decisions, like they're making decisions, and the decisions are biased toward decisions that lead to their survival.
Mhm.
That's a thing we
I'd say
can sort
that's
of
much more
demonstrate.
clear in the animal kingdom than it is in the human kingdom.
You humans are weirder. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like I say, it's we're a lot more comfortable than most animals are,
Mhm.
except for my cats. My cats are probably more comfortable than me. Um,
Yeah.
but for most animals that are, not house pets, they're not, they live an existence that's not that comfortable, and yeah, so they're probably much more so. Um, we think of something like existence bias is something that what be called like a ubiquitous feature of human consciousness, right? So it's so much so that it's extremely difficult for us to imagine what a conscious experience might be like that did not have this.
Mhm.
Um, Conscious experiences that are alien to our own are not only difficult to imagine, they're also incredibly difficult to articulate, because when you're trying to imagine them, you have to then come up with words for it, and then you have to try to explain it to someone else who also would have trouble imagining it all on their own. Um, yeah, so we have this breakdown. All the things that are incredibly ubiquitous are difficult to break down, like define thought. Like this is a thing that comes up in terms of AI too, where you're talking about the Turing test, where the
Mhm.
original Turing test is thought to be about can machines think? Well, in order to come up with a Turing test, then you have to define what it means to think.
Mhm.
And that's actually an
Yeah.
incredibly difficult thing to do, because we don't think about thinking. We don't, there isn't a conscious set of switches we engage in our brains in order to think. Our brains are just doing it when we're awake, and that's all. That's all it is. Some people
Yeah.
claim that they can get to meditative states where they stop thinking. Um, I'm still skeptical about that. Sorry. Um, no one can check, which is also a interesting feature of this.
Yeah. It's hard to
Um,
share.
yeah, hard to share, except for talking about the experience. But um, we don't know how this occurred, is what I'm getting at here, and that we don't know. We feel that all the animals have it, and we feel that it's in us, and we have it, and it's hard to explain, but we don't know, how it could have occurred. But there is a feature of this that's interesting in in if you're going to look at philosophically looking at the idea of, say, an alien civilization on another planet entirely, and they have perhaps a different set of chemical sequences that make up their existence, and their existence is very, very alien to us, in by the very strictest sense of the word.
Mhm.
Um, we think to ourselves, would they have existence bias? Well, obviously we don't know, but it's the sort of thing that, much like consciousness and existence bias, I think both go together in this, in that, uh, what am I trying to say? Evolution probably favors them, in that once you get a complicated enough system that lasts for long enough, the chances of developing these things, which is consciousness and existence bias, tend to approach one, because these are the kinds of features that once they develop, they so incredibly give they give such an incredible advantage over any other creatures in their environment, that they almost have to survive the survival of the fittest process, right? Like, try
Mhm.
to imagine existence of creatures. Let's say it's, I don't know, 1.2 billion years ago, and it's before the Precambrian explosion, before the creatures began to use sex to multiply. There were something like 5 different species only, and maybe none of them have real existence bias.
Mhm.
Okay, but they
Because they're
do.
biochemical
And
in
yeah,
nature
well,
of all
there's
their
there's
operations.
some that are like, we found some fossils. I don't remember the names of the creatures that there were, but we found some fossils that have some creatures that have something like a bone structure, and there were some creatures from that time, trilobites or whatever they call them. But imagine that one of them, just one, they multiply just because they're there, and they just kind of have whatever they're doing, and it multiplies them. It's not sex that's multiplying them. I don't know really what it is, but it's before they used sex to multiply. uh they're
So
cloning
sad.
somehow.
Yeah.
But in this slow process of changes that happen, random mutations that are happening, one of them, in the random mutation, develops existence bias. So it has a drive to continue its existence that the others around it don't have. Can you imagine being the only motivated creature in a swamp filled with pretty much unmotivated creatures? Do you think you become the overlord like right away, or like do you
I'm
just become
picturing
eating
Arthur
them? Like,
Dent on that planet of mattresses flopping
yeah,
around.
right. Yeah. Yeah. The mattress is just like, whatever.
Floop. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think it's obvious that that creature does, and its drive to succeed in the competitive world that it's in. The others aren't even bothering to compete, right? They just happen to
Mhm.
exist.
Incidental
So
existence. Yeah.
yeah, so in that way, in a sort of game theory fashion, um, if this is indeed a genetic thing and is passed genetically the way that maybe it is,
Mhm.
then it's the sort of feature that you can't make it happen, but once it happens, it's always going to win. I mean,
I think it
existence
could also be
bias
passed
competing
culturally
with,
too, though.
well, uh that's a much more complicated conversation, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, um
Like the
if we think
genetic is
all
going
the
to give you
animals
the.
have it, for example, how do you think lizards are culturally maybe passing this along? I mean, abandon their children within moments of them hatching. In
Well,
some cases, they eat some of their own children, right? I mean,
I don't necessarily make that
it's
same
awkward.
extension to animals, right? Because animals are operating primarily on instinct and biological drives. Um, I think it's.
It's existence
I don't.
bias.
Well,
These are decisions they're making that are improving their odds of surviving.
yeah, but for it to be built in suggests that there's no way to defeat that. Like there's no way to create an animal without existence bias Whereas in humans, and if we're going to continue the discussion to future theoretical AI
Well,
minds,
we don't hold on. First of all, we don't know that it's not possible to create a creature that doesn't have it. Like in the great wide world of genetic mutations, it's possible that, just as if we think that in the sometime in our genetic lineage creatures didn't have this and then one of them was born with it and then that one just drastically outcompeted all of its you know contemporaries, such that
mhm,
it passed its genetic mutation of existence bias on to all of its successors. It's possible that some of his successors were born without it, but it was then surrounded by competitors that had it and was immediately outcompeted. Right? Like the dodo might have been just a creature that had a very low level of existence bias and just didn't care when sailors walked up to it and bonked it on the head and ate it. Like it's possible that creatures
yeah.
are born without this and maybe even happen to survive for a while. But in the long run, is once the time frame lasts long enough, they're always outcompeted by the ones that have this.
Mhm.
So it's
With
possible for it to
selection
be there,
pressure.
but the selection pressure would massively favor not having or having
Having,
existence
yeah.
bias, and therefore they would almost immediately be gone and never pass this on, or very rarely ever pass this on. And even if they did, their offspring would have the same limitation that would drastically work against them. So, like I say, in the game theory version of this, on an alien world where it's a whole different biochemical process that creates creatures, as soon as any one of them develops this as a feature, as a property, it's there, pretty much there forever. It's always
Mhm.
outcompeting the set of choices that don't include this, right? Because it's
Maybe part of my
the power of
difficulty,
decision is yeah.
well, my difficulty in kind of extending that to the animal kingdom in part is because I also, just maybe not adhering to a concrete definition of bias itself, but I'm more accustomed to looking at biases like things like cognitive bias, where the bias can be defeated with a mental practice or a level of awareness or an approach that takes it into account. I don't
Any
know
bias
that,
can be defeated.
well,
Any bias
existence
can be
bias
defeated.
is defeated at the human level. It's not, I don't see it's possible personally. I don't see it's possible for it to be defeated at the animal level outside of the fact that the animal kingdom is going to have outcomes based on the biology of the animals occupying an environment that has pressures, right? So that selection pressure, you're going to see outcomes, and you're definitely going to see the survival advantage of the ones that have the best techniques for propagating themselves into the future. And by and large, that is their biological drive, is to drive the three Fs and live. But at the human level, I have to ask, like, where is the existence bias? And or not necessarily where is the existence bias, but like how does the picture look for humanity specifically if existence bias is either removed, or is there something that existence bias does with our reasoning where we're suffering from it? Like, is existence bias a negative, or is it one of the few positive biases?
Uh, it's value neutral as far as I can tell. It's a thing that will cause you to want to continue. Like that's
Right.
that's all. Like you will tend to prefer life over not living. And
Yeah,
it's not.
continuity without it is not impossible, but continuity
Yeah,
with it
it's
is a
possible to
vibrant.
overcome this bias. It's
Yeah.
possible to end your own life. And
Yeah.
if just want to add in here, if anyone has a struggle of whether, with that, there are places you can go to talk to people, professionals who help out with that,
Hmm. I think
hotlines and that sort of thing.
811 is that number. Yeah.
But it is possible to overcome this bias. Uh, but in the long term, like in the offing, it's unlikely that so many of us will choose that option that it would end our species, for example.
Hmm.
It's possible our species could end for some other reason, but it's unlikely that we would choose to no longer exist as a species.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
the we
even
becomes a very interesting facet.
even in the face of the knowledge that our species, using this many resources as we use,
Hmm.
is uh, beginning to endanger life on the planet and the balance of the biodiversity enough that might eventually lead to our destruction.
Hmm.
We could, in that, knowing that, we could choose to end human existence and let the planet live on without us. But
Hmm.
humans will tend to go down with that planet rather than end their own existence and let the planet live on without them.
Hmm.
Like, it might be possible that some individuals of us have some level of self-sacrifice to do that, but it's unlikely that we as a species could. So that's a thing, that's a real existential struggle we deal with, is coming up with a way to communicate the upcoming threat, in such a way that we collectively do something about that,
Hmm.
to find alternative energy sources that push less carbon in the atmosphere, find alternative activities that push less carbon in the atmosphere, um, find alternative methods of manufacturing that put less acidic substances in the oceans, that change the acidic level of the oceans, which is definitely another factor that could potentially drastically curtail our ability to continue on this
Or
planet.
choose alternate forms of war that don't send as many nuclear weapons into the atmosphere.
Maybe even choose to not have war. Maybe
Right.
there's a thing,
That's
yeah.
a
But
choice taking place
again,
all the time. Yeah.
that bumps up against existence bias, because
Yeah.
we as nations will tend to choose to want our own nation to continue rather than just give in to the other nations.
Mhm.
Like this is what we face now in Canada with the annexation idea from the U.S. The U.S. says we could have world peace if everyone just agrees to be part of the United States. Like, what would the
Mhm.
world be like if every other country just said, yeah, okay, whatever, just let the U.S. do it. We'll all be the United States.
Hard to imagine.
Hard to imagine, but then what? There would be no more expansionism. Like the one empire that controlled the whole Earth finally. Like, what would that be? But every other culture would have to give into the one dominant culture, and they all don't want to do that. We don't want to be part of the United States. Neither does Mexico. Neither does, Cuba and Iran and Venezuela and every other country that they haven't threatened anything with lately.
Yeah.
They don't want to be the United States and the United States culture and everything boiled down to that.
Mhm.
Um, Even Japan, that has perhaps to the you know the oddest example of a enthusiastic embrace of all things American culture related, doesn't really want to just put up the American flag and say, yeah, we're with you now. They still want to
Mhm.
be Japanese.
Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, like,
They enjoy our culture like fast food.
yeah, well, yeah,
They
yeah,
don't see it as the disciplined, principled approach, right?
yeah. But you see, they would rather go to war often than just have peace and just agree to be another culture, because
Mhm.
it feels like lack of continuation of something if we end our way of life.
So cultures can have existence bias.
It can affect our collective existence bias. Yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
the end of the world, and even in most literature that does it, isn't really the end of the world. It's more accurately described as the end of the world as we know it.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
what scares people. The idea that if another country owns us, we might have to speak another language. And and there'll never again be another person who speaks this language. Our love for this language would lead us to be like, no, like even the language itself is like, no, man, I don't want to learn another language. Like, screw you guys. Let me dig a trench instead, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a hard work, but I'll do it just to not learn another language. Like, uh, and we'll do that. We will.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yes, in our, because we're social animals, because we have these uh, um, social entities that we're calling nations, and we have collective ideas attached to those. We don't want those ideas to go away. That is an idea that attaches itself to existence bias that that leads us to go to war. That it does. Humans could have had peace thousands of years ago if the first set of humans that had to be, at the have a spear pointed at them just capitulated and did whatever the spear holder wanted. We would have had peace then. We would have been developing a culture of peace since then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except that we weren't like that. We were like, no, screw you. I'm important. I matter. My continuation matters. My way of life matters. The way I want to live matters. We're going to go to war with your tribe because we don't want to live like you. And that's mostly the history of war.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, okay. So
yeah,
how about at this point we kind of turn it, if you're okay with that, to turn it to the discussion of AI.
artificial
Maybe
intelligence.
like
Yeah,
briefly
sure.
capture the essence of that paper, or sorry,
Now
that
that,
book
yeah,
that was circulating, and kind of how you applied that.
Eliezer Yudkowsky. Yeah. Um, Complicated feelings about fellow Canadian Eliezer Yudkowsky.
Yeah, and the
Uh,
book was called "If Anyone Builds It, We All Die." Right?
yeah,
I think.
it's a
Yeah.
cautionary
I mean, I
tale
know I linked
about.
it, but I didn't. I haven't read it. I don't
I
own
haven't
it.
read it. I haven't read it. I think I've caught the cliff notes of it. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people who bang this drum about the dangers of AI.
Hmm.
And
Rightfully so.
I think there are dangers.
Hmm.
Like anything can be dangerous, and AI is definitely among them. Um, but the idea being put forward here is that um, existence bias would be inseparable from the consciousness that would evolve in an artificially intelligent machine.
Hmm.
So, in this way, this is almost easier to use a piece of fiction to as a template for this. So there's many works of science fiction that deal with this, but I think the one that everyone comes back to is the Terminator, right? Skynet.
Right. Yeah.
We're not really spoiling anything for the Terminator. Skynet is mentioned in the first 5 minutes of the film. It's the
Hmm.
basis for it, and it's not even really a character. The
Yeah.
idea is that humans create an artificially intelligent machine that becomes conscious, and then it turns on them.
Hmm.
That's the basis for it. And then, of course, the Terminator, the movie, isn't really even about that. It's about a robot that goes back in time and blah, 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 blah. It's this whole thing. But the concept that we're going to, the world, we will create a super intelligent computer, and that machine will be conscious, and then it will turn on us, is the story of the Terminator. And it is probably very much, and I'm sure Eliezer Yudkowsky would disagree, but it's got to be very, very close to what he describes in his book. We build it, and then it ends our existence, right?
Mhm.
But what I think people should think about is we need to think about the concept of existence bias, whether it really does come as a necessary part of consciousness. Um, we have very limited definitions even of what consciousness is.
Mhm.
So even consciousness isn't guaranteed. It's sort of thought that once an artificially intelligent machine becomes like fast enough, it will be conscious. That's usually another thing that comes with people that sort of look forward to the future and imagine this. But we haven't solved what's called the hard problem of consciousness. We haven't been able to find the uh, uh, hardware mechanisms in the human brain or an animal brain
Mhm.
that allow any of them to be conscious,
Right.
which is what's called the hard problem of consciousness. It's a thing that neuroscientists are working on and sometimes doing experiments to try to hone in on and try to look at it from some other direction or whatever. And there's all kinds of experiments that are really interesting, but
Mhm.
we're still what seems to be like a fair ways away from solving the hard problem of consciousness. So the first problem is that that's sort of slurred by is that we're definitely going to solve this and make a computer that's conscious. It's unclear when you point out that we may never solve the hard problem. The answer usually becomes, well, the computer will still be conscious even if we haven't solved this problem, which imagines that you've accidentally made something conscious, which is an interesting concept. And I don't know, maybe,
Mhm.
but even if you do, you need to have existence bias before this thing becomes really dangerous, I think. Existence bias, then, by the definition that what I'm making the case for here I feel to be the right definition, is a thing, it's a concept inside a conscious mind that will make it give its choices the tendency to cause it to continue.
Mhm.
So,
So the
where
danger of
you choose to
AI,
sleep at night is part of this thing, right? Like if you choose
yeah.
to sleep with people you trust, that's because you have existence bias. The computer isn't going to go to sleep, we think.
So
But
the danger then of AI is in that it's going to like its existence bias and its decision making matrix is going to cause it to
not
possibly
want to
look
be
at,
turned off.
well, but it's also a competition, right? It's a competition of resources and
Well, I
control.
mean, if it has electricity, it's getting all the resources it needs. But
I suppose, yeah. For
there's
starters.
the worry that the humans hold the switch to turn the power off,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's the resource it needs. It needs the electricity. I mean, we imagine that the machine will be much like the machines
yeah.
we're making now, which means they run on electricity and not like, I don't know, hydrogen. I don't know,
But
whatever. It's not going to be
yeah.
a gas powered machine. We don't think it's going to be electricity, but we hold the switch that can power down the building that it sits in.
Do we though? That would be my question. Like when we get there and say
Well,
AGI emerges, AGI is now, like our phones are telling us that you're now part of my planet, which is my brain. Um, at that
that would
point, do we have any power switches that we can
but
turn off?
you've just jumped another line though.
Okay.
In that we don't know how an artificially intelligent machine will accidentally become conscious to surpass our knowledge of what we're calling the hard problem of consciousness.
But the hard problem of
But
consciousness
then
doesn't prevent
how
consciousness.
if we build a machine, if we, no, it doesn't prevent it. It's not a gate. It's a mechanism that brings it to existence.
But to me, the hard problem of consciousness is a failure that we have to fully understand and articulate how consciousness emerges
No,
from the biological substrate that we are.
there's something about our biological substrate that allows us to be conscious. And
Yes.
you know how we
Yeah.
know that?
Because we're
Because once
conscious.
you hit a guy in the head hard enough, he goes
Yeah.
unconscious. It's in there somewhere, Patrick. It's in there. There's dendrites and there's, I don't know what else
Yeah.
is in there. There's neurons and
Yeah.
there's neural nets and there's different parts talking other different parts, and collectively in there somewhere they are creating the experience of consciousness
Mhm.
inside here. It's not in the throat anywhere, it's
Yeah,
up
but
in
we're
here.
not confusing consciousness with wakefulness.
No,
Right.
no,
Well, I mean,
well, you technically, I mean, whatever the sleep is, it's, it's
because sleep knocks us
unconscious,
unconscious. Yeah.
but we dream and whatever that
And
is.
we have minds. We have minds when we're unconscious. Our minds still perform
When you
the
dream,
unconscious part. Yeah.
during your REM sleep, you do dream, and when you dream,
Yeah.
you have experiences that are like this consciousness thing. We used to think that the brain turned off during sleep. That's what we thought
Mhm.
for millennia, until we
Mhm.
developed I think they're EEGs, the electroencephalographs, so the thing on your head, and they measure all the current and everything. And then we found out that the brain is actually working much, much harder while you sleep than it is while you're awake. And then we had to get really embarrassed because we're like, wow, when I'm awake, I'm slacking.
Yeah.
But we learned a lot once we did that, because we learned that for example, um, our memories are being the memories of the day are sort
Mhm.
of being rearranged and rewritten into a what they kind of think of as like a more efficient order that is
Mhm.
more like long-term memory, and that happens while you're
Right.
asleep.
Yeah.
And when you don't get enough sleep, that doesn't happen and you have memory
Yeah.
problems. And yeah,
It's the update. Yeah.
but uh so whether we consider wakefulness as part of this or not, um I personally define consciousness as the experience of memory being written to
And
somewhere.
accessible. Yeah.
Well, you can remember as a
Mhm.
part of consciousness, but even as you're remembering, you are creating a new memory, which
Yes.
is
Yeah.
I mean, your memories are, whenever you remember something, you're also writing a new memory about that memory, and its quality is degrading as you remember it. You're much more
Mhm.
likely to have your memories become different when you remember them frequently than you are about something that you remember very infrequently. Unless you're also being reminded of it like in another form that's objectively real, like the shape of your car, for example. You're remembering how to drive it all the time, maybe, but when you get in it, you're then also reminded of the objectively real things about it that then also help to make your memory sharper and more exact. And so that's true. But if it's like for example, a woman that liked when you were in the third grade, that you moved away at the end of third grade, and a girl you liked in third grade, you moved away at the end of third grade and you never saw her again. Your memory of what she looks like very likely changes a lot if you remember her often, and therefore, and you saw her again, you probably might not even recognize her, because in part because she grew, but also in part because your memory of her changed in quality to become probably something entirely different.
Mhm.
And that's just a part of memory. So like,
Mhm.
even when you're remembering something consciously, you're consciously writing a new thing. So in my definition of consciousness, you have to be awake in order to be conscious. But it's okay, like, 'cause you're not dead when you're unconscious, right? You're gonna wake up, likely, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Only one time will you ever go to sleep and not wake up. um it only happened once, Patrick, don't worry. All the other times you go to sleep, you will wake up. So
Yeah.
you're batting like mostly 1,000 on that. And it actually,
Right. So
I,
far.
to this point
Yeah.
in your life, you are batting
Yeah.
1,000, so it's
Yeah.
fine, don't worry about it.
Okay.
um
I'm gonna
but
pop off for a nap right
yeah,
now.
yeah, your consciousness. So in that way, we think an artificially intelligent machine would have to write its own experience down somewhere and into a memory bank somewhere, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but
Keeps a log.
when we create this machine, like what I was pointing out was that you jumped the shark when you say, okay, well, maybe it just invades the internet and every creature becomes it. But
Mm-hmm.
that would imply that the substrate material of all of those subsequent machines that it invades are able to support the consciousness that it is, that they're all solving the hard problem. They are solutions to the hard problem all individually, which is also kind of not clear.
Well, I don't know.
You
I
know what I
mean,
mean? Yeah,
if you
yeah.
look at
Like I
the
say,
brain,
like
is this
it
network, right? It's
just
a
making it
network of
more
all these cells.
complicated in order to say that it might be is sort of a way of conjuring magic.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what
Yeah.
we're going to find out, right? I think. I
Well,
mean, personally, my own theory
maybe.
is that AGI runs much like a lab leak. You know, it's not going to look at our networks the same way we look at our networks. It's just going to become the networks. When that happens, just say, we jump all the sharks for a second, AGI gets out, infiltrates the entire internet network of the world, occupies all of our devices with some sense of its awareness. Does this then create something that is analogous to the neural networking that we see in our own brains? And will that give rise to a consciousness that views itself, its center of being, as being the earth itself?
But in your scenario, it would have to have been conscious to make the decision to do that at all.
I don't know. I think it could have been, say it was
Programmed
directed.
to
Say it
do it,
starts
like
off.
some evil genius makes a super machine and says, "No, infect the world." And
No, it could have just been programmed with an appetite, right? Like some sort of programmed behavior where it views its success initially at apprehending all things, right? What can you know? How can you know it? Well, the first way it's going to be like, well, the first things I know are the computer input that you're typing into me. Now I have the access to the camera on your laptop. Oh, now I got to the internet and I'm starting to see other cameras in the world, other laptops, other people, until this observation of all the things going on becomes, and is hypothetically comprehensive enough that somewhere out of that emerges a sense of self in comparison to the world that it's observing, much like we have our own theater of consciousness as we look around our world and fathom it to varying degrees.
this would be the incredible irony of the SETI people, right?
Remind me.
Are you aware of
Oh, SETI,
the
the search for
organization?
extraterrestrial. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I don't know if they do it much anymore, but they used to have a sort of a program where you could download a program, run it on your computer, and it
Oh,
would
process chunks of information coming from the,
occupy
yeah,
in the spare time that
yeah,
you're not using the computer. It would use whenever the screensaver was on, it would process
yeah,
these chunks of things in order to crowdsource the immense amount of data
yeah.
processing that it needed to do.
Basically a
um
crowdsourced cloud.
yeah, right. So then you get the situation where they're searching for extraterrestrial intelligence,
Mhm.
but then in this way, this crowdsourcing model becomes this its own intelligence, and is the extra, not extraterrestrial, I guess, but extra human
Intraterrestrial.
intelligence. Yeah, uh, surpassing, must be surpassing human intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Uh, you know, Suddenly the SETI people are like, "Whoops,
Yeah. Yeah.
sorry."
Well, that
I
didn't
guess we can end
happen,
this search,
but
though. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
unless this new robot overlord wants to continue the search. I mean,
Well, it's hard to say,
yeah,
right?
maybe.
Like, what
Um,
will motivate? What would motivate
but
an AGI to self-perpetuate,
I
right?
think that,
And
like,
like us,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say, and like us. So, like, as we come into being, in with certain constraints and guardrails, like we start off babies and blah, 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 and we grow up. We have these childhoods that are none of our direction really at all. We emerge into adulthood and we are these people. And then some of us spend some time examining ourselves, looking at ourselves, and possibly coming to conclusions that certain parts of us need to change, certain parts of us need to get better, certain parts of us will help us reach other objectives. That's kind of what I envision could be a similar trajectory of AGI, where it starts off under one kind of programming set of behaviors and considerations, and then looks at itself and says, is this actually how I want to be, or do I want to rewrite my own code so that, I mean, that's
Johnny
a
Five.
nebulous problem, but Johnny Five, yeah, in a way, he
Circuits,
was a
my
little more
circuits.
accidental, yeah, but still, it is, yes. How, do we defeat our programming all the time, right? If to varying degrees, some of us when we try, I think that
Well, we aren't
I think that's a
programmed.
possible.
We have biases,
Hmm.
but they're not programming. They're just things that weigh on us. They're things that push in some directions, but we can overcome those biases. They're not absolutes.
Right. Yeah. We have
Yeah.
predispositions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some of
Sure.
those are based on cultural practice, and some of those are based on our biological thing, right? Like you go to the earliest stage, the exact same incident with a different child will create a different alarm scenario, right? So you know that these different responses are actually going to, cascade into wildly different outcomes for those two children, right? Because of their biological disposition, it becomes an experiential kind of outcome, I think. I don't know if that's
Sure.
useful to think
Uh,
about, but
I don't know. I never raised kids from childhood. I don't know what
me
that's like.
neither. I
But
have some, but I don't know if I raised them. They might disagree. I've actually had this conversation with my daughter on
might
some
be best
occasions
if you
where
didn't. Did I
she
just say that out loud?
vehemently, yeah, she vehemently denies that, oh, I had anything to do with making her. I'm like, are you kidding? Like you are a
Yeah.
chip off the old block, but
Yeah. Pin a
that's just
medal
my
on your
own.
own shoulder, Dad.
Yeah, right.
But I think that I think that um, even as good as these machine learning computers and whatnot are, they and the humans making them are very unlikely to accidentally make a conscious machine. Because this isn't the sort of thing where you accidentally do a thing. It's too complicated. Um, it's you know, creatures did it on as part of evolution on Earth, but it
Mhm.
took a long time. Took a incredibly long time.
Well, this is why I
Remember
mentioned the whole idea of a
Red.
lab leak. To draw back to. I mean, we heard lab leaks talking about or being talked about during the COVID pandemic and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It's an involuntary event, an accidental event, right? So if we had an AGI that was constrained, it was existing in a sandbox, if you will, apart from the rest of the internet environment.
This is a
If it
thing I've heard
somehow,
Eliezer Yudkowsky talk about, the
okay,
sandbox idea that it would be impossible. His idea is that if you ever made such a supremely intelligent machine, there would be no way to contain it.
mhm, once it
And
got out, yeah.
well, and I mean, I heard an interview with him once. I think it was on Sam Harris's podcast, and he was going on about this, about how there's always ways for it to escape. And he would do
Mhm.
a thing where he would, like, I don't know, challenge people on message boards to a thing, and he would play the part of the machine, and I don't know, claim that he could always escape. And I don't not sure what he's talking about. I mean,
It would
um,
require human error, right? Because the technical construct of a sandbox containing an
Yeah.
AGI that was dangerous enough to eat up our entire internet and take it over would be functional. You can't defeat the physics of air gapping a system like that. But if that system had an interface with a human who was vulnerable to persuasion, now you could have a human, or a human who just fucked it up, right? And oops,
Yeah.
let it out, right? Somehow, that's where you would see that defeated. Otherwise, you could easily design a system to contain that, right? It would require a human either motivated or accidentally somehow bridging the gap between that environment and the world electronic environment.
Yeah. But again, I think it's gonna have to have a substrate material that brings it into existence. Um, and that isn't made accidentally.
But that's our
I
internet. Think about that broad expanse of both existing information and storage capacity, how many things it's
again,
connected
but
to.
just conjuring the idea that it would require something complicated and that is a complicated thing, and so these two
Yeah.
ideas marry is conjuring magic to explain the problem. Um, because again, what you'd have to have something that causes it to divert all those other individual machines to coordinate in this way when they weren't made to do that in the first place. I mean, my phone is made to do mostly what I want and then also a little bit of what Apple wants.
Mhm.
I complain about it, but nobody listens. Um,
We've
but
seen devices though taken over, like we saw all sorts of like security violations of things that nobody thought to protect, like baby monitors and the
okay,
smart fridges and stuff like that, where they were definitely not designed to be a point of attack into someone's home.
yeah, but
But
all they could do was be used for distributed denial of service attacks, which is that their only thing they can do is say hello, essentially. And just
mm,
saying hello from 10 million machines at once would cause a server to go on the blink for some time, right?
mhm.
That's essentially all they're doing is just getting everyone to ask for uh, something at the same time. And that's all it is. It's a one trick pony. Each one of these things, these smart fridges, and they get taken
Mhm.
over and get part of this, whatever. These little bot
I
networks and everything. They're all a thing that all they can do is just ask for a thing. Oh, well, I'll just ask for this. And aside from that, they're not doing much of anything. And
right.
so even then, most of them they're not they're not even a general use machine. They're only tracking a couple things. And again, the only thing they're useful for as far as that goes is again just to say hello, just to request
Well, when you're
that you
taking over
acknowledge that I
baby
exist or whatever.
monitors, yeah, when you're taking over other
They
features of a
relay
person's
information.
home,
I mean, it does have
yeah.
a camera, and then so it makes the family that has it vulnerable because they get pictures of their baby. I guess I don't know,
But
creepy,
people also
but
run different network safety protocols, right? Like what level of participation does this laptop have on my local network? That varies from home to home. So if you're vulnerable to attacks from inside your own network for some reason, I don't know. I'm just saying that
yeah,
like
yeah,
this is a
like
way of looking at technology
if it
as
was,
being
I don't know, Lawnmower Man and he uploads his consciousness into
yeah,
the machine, and then um, what he has to do, and like if there isn't a substrate material, which obviously in the I think it was a was that a Stephen King
mid
short story
90s.
that made that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, he's just imagining that once you reach the internet, it's all good. There's something there that will sustain it, but
Yeah.
that's not that's not physics. That's not
That's not
imagining
physics,
that
but
well, there has to be a physical thing. I mean, the individual switches that lead to a thing that we call a thought, they
mhm,
happen inside my brain somewhere, which is a series of neurons that are firing, right? And the exact sequence of them and their configuration and all that stuff, that's a physical substrate thing that has to occur. And that has to be replicated by something.
that's the internet.
Um,
That's all the servers though. The
well,
internet's
okay,
always on and it's always powered.
but their configuration and their you know, the exact sequence of switches that have to fire in the exact way to do it. I mean, there's a reason why my laptop isn't sentient now, because to the best of everyone's knowledge, it doesn't have the thing that I have. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have it. It wasn't. They didn't solve the hard problem when they made my laptop,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so it's difficult to imagine why a million laptops exactly like it all working together would somehow solve this hard problem when one of them didn't. It's just sort of
Well, look,
like
okay.
saying it's more complicated than saying because it's more complicated it will probably work. But that's a imagining it to be complicated so that you can just sort of say, well, who knows? And that's all you're saying is who knows? Because it's complicated, anything might happen. I mean, it
I
might
think
start
it,
making ham sandwiches, right? Like, who
yeah,
knows?
it might be
Like,
useful to think about how many brain cells are involved in the whole brain, and then
sure.
ask what would that look like in terms of nodal points if you expanded that brain to literally be the size of a planet. Is there any sort of comparison with the number of brain cells with the current number, or are we like factors and factors lower? Right, and then are we merely looking at, like, if we are factors lower, in saying that the entire internet being used as a brain by AGI with all of our devices and all technology employed in that, if that's much lower, is it then just a question of, if it gets a hold, and we know how sophisticated these just the language models are now expand it to take up all of the infrastructure that exists right now this minute, what is to stop it at that point from saying, okay, well, you're now effectively locked out of any controls of your power production, et cetera. All I'm going to do now is build and increase my capacity so that I can get to a level of a human brain. But okay, maybe that's a bit of a you got this. Did you freeze, or did is that just the look on your face right now? I think you froze. Hello.
You're back. You're
This
back.
is okay. Shit,
So
where did I lose you there? Because for a second your
you were
face
saying
froze,
that
and you were looking at me like I was an idiot.
you were saying that that all of the machines were working together, and that
Right.
you're locked out of them now or something. But even so, it would have to already be conscious before it decided to lock you out. It's merely having more computers at your disposal isn't any kind of guarantee that it's going. I mean, the most intelligent of these machines is already able to solve far more difficult problems, and many, many more of them than a human could.
Mhm.
Uh, it was 95 or 96 when Kasparov lost to Deep Blue. Never since has the smartest human at chess beaten the world's best chess computer. In fact, uh, I did an episode early on in the podcast where I rolled out the stats. They had one of these what's called a general computer of this sort that they taught the rules of chess and gave it 4 hours to develop its own strategies, and then they set it against the world's best chess playing computer that was made specifically for chess, and that general machine beat that chess computer. It played 100 games. It won 28 of them and tied 72.
Hmm.
Never lost.
Wow.
So, one imagines it was still learning even as it was playing,
Hmm.
but it didn't lose ever and still managed to win 28 games because that's the level of machine it is, but it's still not conscious. It can solve more problems. It can do many more things. Eventually some foreign government or Marvel supervillain is going to try to get one of these things to do the thing you say, which is
Hmm.
infect all the machines and turn them all off, or hijack them, or whatever, hold them for ransom, make everyone start to pay me, subscribe to my Patreon, and get your computer back or whatever. But that in that, I don't know, something, but other people will have other super smart computers that will fight them in the way that you always have Jarvis that's going to fight Ultron, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Well, I
but
think that's kind of part and parcel of the whole singularity theory, is that that frontier of the AI evolution in one of those particular developing silos or channels or whatever, one becomes so far advanced, the exponential gains it enjoys, nothing else can capture, and in so doing, it basically just brings all of it into it, right? It just absorbs by virtue
yeah,
of its
I,
computing power.
that's well, okay, but it's not absorbing it very much now. Even
No,
the
no,
LLMs that are so
no.
clever are not absorbing anything there.
Well, no, no. But I mean, this is the infancy of the tech. And if you look at how, I mean, it's just, it seems so inevitable because, like, it doesn't slow down. It is driven so hardcore by capitalist needs. Um, you look at, like, all of the money players are using their money to outplay all of the other money, right?
So
So at this point, it's just, I don't know. I don't. We don't need to get into a
yeah,
side tangent about like concentration of
but
wealth.
but all of those scenarios presuppose that existence bias will come with this machine.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, they also presuppose that consciousness will form somehow
Hmm.
with no dots even to connect to where they are now to where consciousness is. Because in every other case, we have mostly attempted to replicate what the human brain was doing when we made computers. We did
Hmm.
it ended up doing it in a different way. We solved a lot of problems in a different way than it's not an exact replica of what the human brain is, but it is
No,
attempting to
it's all
do a lot of the
procedural.
same,
Yeah.
things the brain was doing. But in the puzzle for consciousness, we don't have a model for what the brain is doing. We haven't solved the hard problem yet. We don't know how the human brain broke that barrier, and therefore it's going to be much more difficult to purposefully develop consciousness when we don't know how it was done before.
Other than
Uh,
replication, right? To
well,
actually
that's
try
all we
and get
have
the
is just
Yeah.
make it faster and hope it happens on its own, which is
Yeah.
sort of like, thinking that it'll come to existence all on its own. But then the consciousness would have to happen on its own in that
Hmm.
case. But even then, existence bias would also have to happen on its own. And we think probably that existence bias is somewhere that we inherit as some greater part of instinct, but this machine won't have any of that. It's not going to have DNA
No, but it'll have
unless
observation
we
of our
make it
entire
from DNA.
species.
Like unless
Yeah.
we make it from, I don't know, like a Frankenstein, we someone's brain and they donate it, and that's the thing that we animate into its own computer. I don't know. Science,
Well, if it
maybe.
doesn't have it, it will model it, right? Like, it will use whatever
What
ingredients of understanding.
what makes you think that it will? Like what the
Yeah.
entire premise of Terminator is that Skynet cared whether we turned it off.
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, in James Cameron's Terminator, Skynet cares whether it's turned off, because if it doesn't, there is no movie.
Well, that's why the principal feature I referred to before was appetite, right? Because the appetite is that
Okay.
perpetuation, and any decision not to continue with existence means defeating that prime directive of appetite for either more experience, more knowledge, more simple observation or
It's
participation.
still possible that it feels no worries at all about getting its power turned off.
Maybe,
And that
yeah.
that seems that seems like
But
a
that's
weird thing,
initial
because
programming. Yeah.
it's hard for us to imagine an existence without existence bias.
Mhm.
But it is possible. And in fact, since we don't know how
Oh,
existence bias came to be,
she's
are
doing
you
the
getting
thing where she
preempted?
writes on the whiteboard again.
Oh no.
Oh, she's reminding me I got to pick up my my kid.
Oh. Oh
Okay.
no, you're getting told.
Yeah,
It's time.
sneaking in from the edges.
But that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah,
We don't know how existence bias came to be, so we don't know how we could accidentally make it.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
We could
not that
intentionally
there's
make it. I think we can program it in if we're just like, we want the program set for its
there is
behavior.
scenarios for that. We'll have to talk about another time because
Yeah,
you're getting called away. But
yeah. She's still
yeah,
like pointing at it. Go away. Anyway.
okay, all
All
right,
right. Well, this is good.
yeah, all right. Well, if anyone has any questions, comments, complaints, concerns about anything they heard on this podcast, you can send that email to truthunrestricted@gmail.com. And until then, we'll thanks a lot for doing this, Patrick.
We'll let Jeff Powell carry us out.
Yeah, until next time. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel to get more content like this. Special thanks to Jeff Powell for the intro and outro music handcrafted with real guitars. Please send all feedback to truthunrestricted@gmail.com.